In June of 2025, Russia hosted a major event, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Over the course of 3 days, Vladimir Putin delivered a statement that stunned many observers. What he did not know was that just a few days later, Ukraine would take an action that utterly contradicted his bold claims and called his grand plans into question. On the 14th of June, in the midst of the high-level discussions, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed news from Andriivka, a small village few had ever heard of, but whose recapture would profoundly shift the conflict's strategic balance. Here is why that mattered. To grasp the significance of this Ukrainian victory, it helps to go back to February of 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion. One of Moscow's first objectives was Sumy, in northeastern Ukraine, on the very border with Russia. Controlling Sumy would have given Putin a direct corridor to Kyiv and enabled a rapid takeover of the capital. However, on the 24th of February of 2022, Russian forces encountered far fiercer resistance than expected. Ukrainian paratroopers, backed by armed civilians, inflicted heavy losses and destroyed a column of tanks in urban combat. They employed what military planners call dispersed strong-point defense, combining the defense of key towns with guerrilla raids on supply lines, a sort of military spider's web that repeatedly ensnared the invaders. By April of 2022, just 2 months later, Russian units had been driven entirely out of Sumy. That outcome debunks the notion that Ukraine's success stemmed solely from Western assistance. At that time, Ukraine fought with Soviet-era rifles and only a handful of anti-tank missiles. The massive Western aid we know today had not yet arrived. Recall that Putin expected to finish the war in 3 days, seize Kyiv, and force Ukraine's surrender. The tenacious defense of Sumy, along with other fierce stands across the country, shattered that timeline and demonstrated Ukraine's true fighting capability. The result was transformative. Western leaders, witnessing Ukraine's resilience, began sending advanced weaponry at scale. Holding Sumy under Ukrainian control also paved the way for the 2-year-later offensive into Kursk on Russian soil. Humiliated by these setbacks, Putin resolved to strike again in 2025. Enter the 225th Separate Assault Regiment, formed by Kharkiv volunteers on the 8th of March of 2022, just 14 days after the invasion began. It began as a territorial defense battalion. In July of 2023, it became an assault battalion, and in February of 2025, it was expanded into a full regiment. Its combat record spans battles in Kharkiv, the brutal fighting of Bakhmut, the defense of Avdiivka, and participation in the Kursk thrust. In May of 2024, they even captured a modern Russian T-90M tank, earning praise in Russian media as one of Ukraine's most formidable Western-equipped units. Yet it was in June of 2025 that this regiment achieved its most remarkable feat. Russia's new offensive aimed to establish a buffer zone around Sumy, deploying some 50,000 troops to seize border villages with fast-moving assault teams. On the 4th of June, Russian forces occupied Andriivka and neighboring Vodolahi, appearing to make steady gains. 10 days later, however, on the 14th of June, the 225th Regiment launched a lightning counterattack, retaking Andriivka with such speed and precision that even military analysts were caught off guard. Zelensky announced the village's liberation that very day, praising the regiment's decisive role. Fighting did not immediately cease. Until the 22nd of June, the unit conducted intense urban clearance operations to root out remaining Russian troops. During this phase, an assault group nicknamed Black Swan eliminated Major Andrei Yartsev in his command post. By the 22nd of June, Andriivka was confirmed entirely free of occupying forces. Why does the recapture of a tiny village matter so much? First, Andriivka lies only 5 kilometers from the border, controlling one of the key access routes into Ukraine. For Putin, it was meant to form part of his defensive shield. Second, reclaiming the village cost Russia dearly in lives and equipment, setting Moscow back to square one in an even weaker position. Third, the operation forced Russia to redeploy troops. The 50,000-strong force at Sumy had come largely from Donetsk, weakening Moscow's main effort there. Ukraine's commander-in-chief reported that this maneuver deprived Russia of 60,000 reinforcements for Donetsk, easing pressure on critical fronts. Beyond the tactical gains, the victory carried immense psychological weight. It shattered the narrative of Russia's steady advances and proved that Ukraine could not only defend itself, but also launch successful counter-offensives. With Andriivka secure, Ukrainian forces have turned their sights to Yunikivka, 14 kilometers away and 7 kilometers from the border, where fighting remains fiercely contested. Commander Syrskyi has reported gains of between 200 and 700 meters in various sectors under the leadership of Brigadier General Ola Apostol, newly appointed head of the Air Assault Forces. In Sumy, modern warfare is on full display. Highly mobile small units, drones, electronic warfare, all in a deadly dance where rapid adaptation determines victory. In this theater, the 225th Regiment stands out for its agility and effectiveness. Although Andriivka's recapture may seem modest on the map, its ripple effects span the entire conflict, proving that Putin's grand expansionist rhetoric remains empty against the reality on the ground. While the Russian president spoke in St. Petersburg, every meter won back by Ukrainian soldiers underscored that this war is fought through sacrifice, strategy, and courage. What do you think? Will Ukraine continue its string of successful counter-offensives, as in Yunikivka? Will Putin persist with grandiose pronouncements even as he loses ground? Or will he be forced to rethink his approach? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis helped you understand the war's dynamics, please subscribe and share so more people can access quality information. Thank you for reading, and until the next update.